In this WrestleTalk news, Vince McMahon wanted to bury Gunther, Steve Austin might be having another WrestleMania match, Luke's review of Raw, and more.
Support WrestleTalk!
Generally speaking, fans have been pretty happy with Triple H's WWE since he's taken over. With the constant drops of dopamine when someone returns to our screens we haven't seen in a while, mostly consistent and easy to understand stories and some actual bloody wrestling, it's been a marked improvement over the Vince McMahon era. But one of the biggest changes that Triple H has made is rescuing the current Intercontinental Champion, Gunther. Back on August 13th of this year, WrestleVotes on Twitter tweeted to say, following his appearance on Raw on 4th of July, those in power at the time really soured on Gunther for whatever ridiculous reason, to the point where a burial on TV was coming. And now in a recent interview with Give Me Sport, WrestleVotes has expanded upon this, noting, "I know that Vince McMahon just didn't like what he saw on Raw on July 4th in a segment with R-Truth, and was over him, like legitimately wanted to bury him, go back to NXT, that type of stuff." Vince, you crazy old man. I'll hand it over to Tempest here to describe Gunther in 4 words.
He's a perfect wrestler!
But luckily, it seems that Triple H's view of Gunther aligns with Tempest's. As WrestleVotes continue to say, Hunter likes him and he's going to give him a shot. People are starting to understand what he is, and the Clash at the Castle deal with Sheamus helped. Would you have buried Gunther? Let me know why you would have in the comments, and I'll tell you why you're the most wrong person in the world. While you're down there leaving a comment, if you haven't yet, consider subscribing to the channel to keep up to date with all the latest wrestling news, and like the video too. Why not? In what was at one point in the year the most shocking thing to happen this year, Stone Cold Steve Austin returned to our screens and had a wrestling match at WrestleMania. It's now about the 17th craziest thing to happen this year, but still, it was a big deal for a little bit. And we might be revisiting the craziness again, as there were rumors circling that Stone Cold could be lined up for another match. In an update from Dave Meltzer, it seems there's smoke to that fire, and there's more to it from Fightful Select, as they report that while the Vince McMahon regime had hoped to have Austin come back to do another match, that the Triple H regime had actually made an offer for Austin to do another match. However, don't bank on it happening, as the report continues to say, initially Austin and WWE were far apart on terms, but maybe they can hash that out and we can get Austin back in the ring again. And in some sad news, it's being reported that Kevin Owens picked up a knee injury at a live event over the weekend. Specifically, Dave Meltzer is reporting that he suffered an MCL sprain, though the indication could be that there's more to it than that. And there's an update on this from Meltzer on Wrestling Observer Radio, where he mentioned, "I believe Owens was going to be in the War Games match. That's not 100% confirmed, but it is certainly the talk, and he was supposed to be in something as a surprise, so it all adds up that it would be the War Games match. If that was the case, this could cost him that, which would absolutely suck for him and the fans if that's the case, as you'd think that would kickstart the next chapter of the Bloodline story. But perhaps that'll have to wait." WrestleTalk would like to wish Kevin Owens the speediest of recoveries. Now, hot tag to Luke.
Thank you for your support on Patreon. He can last Sean for longer than you in the ring, and Starbucks Stephen Costa. You can get your own shout out on the WrestleTalk news by going over to patreon.com/WrestleTalk. And now it's time for my review of Monday Night Raw, aka the "oh yeah, I also forgot that Akira Tozawa was on this brand edition of Monday Night Raw" in about 5 minutes. The show kicked off with Seth Rollins coming out to make fun of Austin Theory being a massive bellend who smegged up his Money in the Bank cash-in last week. This brought out Bobby Lashley, who oddly said that what happened to Theory last week will happen to Seth until he gets a title match. Mate, you had one of those last week, and you blew it by being a massive bellend who smegged up his chance at the US title. Rollins even pointed this out, and Mustafa Ali came out to challenge Bobby Lashley to a match. And this was a bad move on Ali's part, as he got his wish and was absolutely squashed and dominated by Lashley in a matter of minutes. Now you may think this was a burial of poor Mustafa Ali. Free Ali! You'll write on Twitter hoping that he goes to AEW or something, but this was actually a really good underdog Ali performance. He got in a flurry of offense, brief though it was, and he didn't tap out to the Hurt Lock, with the match ending via ref stoppage. He was a valiant babyface in all of this. It's just a pity that it isn't getting over with the live crowds. Last week's crowd was wonderful. They didn't react to anything all night. But this is now the 4th or 5th week since we've started this Ali experiment, and it isn't connecting with anyone. He's not getting a Bryan Danielson reaction. He's not getting the Rey Mysterio crowd backing. And that's what they're going for, and it's a shame because Ali is an exceptional talent and a fabulous babyface. This just needs something, some little tweak. AJ Styles challenged Finn Balor to a one-on-one match at Survivor Series, which more or less guaranteed that Mia Yim and Rhea Ripley would be in the Women's War Game match, and Yim then beat Tamina in a very heatless match, though I wouldn't have expected anything much more than that, as this is Yim's first proper main roster match in front of a WWE crowd. And it was against Tamina, who no one will react to, even though no one is apparently meaner than her. Yim then did a spot with Rhea Ripley after the match, with this crowd way more into the established Rhea Ripley than Mia Yim. Matt Riddle did some comedy with Alpha Academy backstage, then had a match with Chad Gable, which, and you might not believe me when I say this, saw Chad Gable win. Yeah, you heard that right. Chad Gable. Chad Gable, in a singles match no less, won. He got Riddle's shoulders to the mat and pinned them there. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, sure, Otis was holding down his feet while they were on the ropes to give him leverage, but Gable won on TV. Chad Gable hasn't won a singles match on TV since July. Vince McMahon was in charge of WWE in July. Boris Johnson was our Prime Minister in July. That's how long ago it was. I was delighted to see Gable pick up the win here, but boy howdy, without Randy Orton around, Matt Riddle really has fallen down the card, hasn't he? He won that Seth Rollins feud, but Rollins is off in the main event and Riddle is just, well, he's playing bongos in bad comedy and losing to a man who hasn't won a singles match since the Queen was alive. The Miz came out wearing a cardigan that I imagine myself and Dan Layton will have a lot to say about on the Raw review on the WrestleTalk podcast later on, and admitted again that he paid Dexter Lumis to stalk him months and months ago. Johnny Gargano came out and repeated all the same stuff we've had for the last few weeks, and then revealed that in 2 weeks, we'll see Dexter Lumis versus The Miz, where if Lumis wins, he'll get a job in WWE. You know, the same f***ing stipulation we had literally a f***ing month ago. Liz Truss was our Prime Minister then, that's how long ago it f***ing was. This storyline started on August the 8th. There have been 14 episodes of Monday Night Raw since that date. It will be the 16th edition of Monday Night Raw by the time this storyline might come to an end. And before you type in the comments that this is long-term storytelling, Luke, this is not long-term storytelling. Long-term storytelling moves things forward week by week. This is not move forward. There is a difference between long-term storytelling and a story that takes a long time to tell. This is the latter, not the former. Shelton Benjamin had another match on Raw. He lost, but it's still nice to see Shelton do a wrestle. It was a decent 5-minute match with Dominic Mysterio, who this week was dressed like me in 2002. Dom won with the frog splash. Io Sky defeated Dana Brooke in a short match, and Mia Yim, after being offered a place on Bayley's team for War Games earlier in the night, announced that she'll be the new and friend by joining Bianca and Friends. Rhea Ripley unceremoniously announced that she'll join Bayley's team in a backstage segment later on. I think I'd rather have just seen the OC versus Judgment Day in a traditional Survivor Series match, rather than Yim and Ripley being in the War Games and AJ and Balor having a straight singles match, which you could have held off on doing for a later show. It's a bit lazy on WWE's part. And with them randomly recapping Rhea Ripley killing Beth Phoenix at Extreme Rules, is Beth Phoenix going to be the 5th member for Bianca Belair and Friends? I mean, it would be awesome if she is, but it sort of sucked for Candice LeRae as they'd already set her up to join the team last month. Akira Tozawa beat JBL and Baron Corbin in a backstage poker game that was actually funny, but then lost to Corbs in a match where Tozawa got way more offense in than you'd think. The only thing missing from all of this was JBL on commentary freaking out because his guy came so close to losing a few times. All of this was a lot of fun. But by far the best thing on the show, and the big talking point if you ask me, is the follow-up to Austin Theory failing with Money in the Bank last week. For starters, they did a good job of explaining why Theory cashed in on Seth. Theory explained that Roman isn't around all the time, and when he is, he's surrounded by the bloodline. Plus, he tried to cash in on Roman but was stopped by Brock Lesnar and then stopped by Tyson Fury. But even without them then, he would have just been stopped by the bloodline. So he made the choice to cash in on Seth Rollins instead. That's all well and good. The problem with this is that they did it on the same night that Seth had 2 open challenges. And on this very show, Rollins defended the United States Championship against someone else. But I give them credit for trying to make it make sense. Theory's promo was interrupted by Dolph Ziggler, who called it the worst cash-in ever, and it set up a match between the two. You know, the same match and basic setup we had back in August. But here is where I am wrong. Because this my wonderful, beautiful friends, was character development. Theory came out without his mobile phone taking selfies. He was a more serious Austin Theory. He actually felt more like a main event guy. There was no goofiness or smug heel shenanigans. And when Ziggler got two very big near falls on him, which massively popped the crowd, Theory snapped. He hit his finish on Ziggler but wouldn't go for the pin. So he did it again and again didn't go for the pin. He then destroyed Ziggler around ringside as the referee called for a DQ. It was a great performance by Theory and a brilliant sell job by Ziggler. It was progression and movement from their first encounter in August. In just 2 matches and a couple of segments, this had more steps forward than all 14 weeks of The Miz and Dexter Lumis. And it also played into the main event of Rollins versus Finn Balor for the US title. The two had a very good match with lots of back and forth action and plenty of crisp reversals, and saw the OC brawl with Judgment Day and AJ push Balor off the top rope for Seth to hit the stomp and pick up the win. And then the pissed off, angry and frustrated Austin Theory laid out Seth Rollins with his finish and belt shot to stand tall. A perfect character reset for a man who had become very stale very quickly when he had the briefcase. It was a perfect follow-up to last week's utter nonsense. And it was a really good close to what was a pretty good show. Outside of the Theory stuff, there was nothing particularly spectacular or earth-shattering. It was your typical middle show in the build to the next pay-per-view. Would have been a 3 out of 5, but the Theory stuff was so great, I'm gonna bump it up to 4 out of 5.
In this WrestleTalk news, the NWA labelled a toxic brand. The real reason for the botch on SmackDown, what's going on with Charlotte Flair, and more.